Hey, everybody. Welcome to my live stream today, Wednesday, November 13th. I actually planned this particular topic just kind of last minute because I was thinking about it and inspired. And I actually went on a trip with my family over the weekend and we went to Pictured Rock National Lakeshore. And I got to tell you, the respite in nature was just what I needed. And we went to this amazing waterfall, and it was just so I could feel the positive ions coming off of the waterfall. And it was interesting because as me and my family were walking to the waterfall, we saw the people who had visited the waterfall and they were traveling like back to the trailhead, and they were so happy. They were like smiling and they were saying like, "You're almost there." And it was just really refreshing, that they were just so happy and friendly. And then when we got to the waterfall and we started going back after visiting the waterfall, we were doing the same thing. And we realized like there's a lot of positive ions coming off of that waterfall, and it really was making a difference in the way people were just interacting with each other and engaging. And so I've been thinking, I already think a lot about nature, but I was thinking even more intensely kind of about the evergreen content strategies that we use and have used for over a decade that can continue to get results for our clients, and just basically have like sustainable long lasting results. And the further I get into marketing, which I've been in for many years, the more I just appreciate this idea of going back to nature and going back to the basics and going back to sustainable practices. And so I wanted to talk today about greening your content and what that means to green your content. So, um, you know, when uh, when we go out into the internet, I mean, I have this experience, go on social media, do searches, and there's just so much out there. It can kind of be like a concrete jungle where, there's maybe little weeds coming up through the cracks. There's no water in sight. There's just like nothing is as fulfilling as sometimes we want it to be when we're going online to search for the solutions to what the problems that we're having, the challenges we're having, to the things we need to do to move our businesses or our organizations forward. And so this idea of greening your content is really all about being more, providing more substantial, substantive content and information and engagement with your audience. And so I wanted to actually talk about a metaphor that's come up a lot lately in my mind. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let's see how this works here. That is all right. So I'm working with what I'm working with here. So let me see if this is working. Is that working? I can't tell. I cannot tell. I'm going to hide this. So what I really want to do is share my screen here, and I am not able to do that without. So let me try something else here. I love how I'm still trying to figure out this whole, here we go. I'm going to do this. Okay. So let's see. Is this what I'm sharing? Great. Awesome. Here we go. All right. I'm still, kind of practicing working with this. I use wave.video for these lives, and there's a lot of great features I like. But anyway, so what I'm showing you here is something called a prairie buffer. So if you don't know what a prairie buffer is, it's an analogy I'm going to use today to talk about, going from kind of that concrete jungle of content that, at Halloween, I talked about it as the content graveyard. Content that maybe it was, sort of like fleeting, it was like random. You thought you should be blogging, you thought you should just be putting up content on your website. So you scramble together something and you put it up there, but there's no real strategy behind it, which is very, very common occurrence that happens. And so I've been thinking a lot about these prairie buffers, or they call them prairie strips as well. And the way it works is it's a conservation practice that integrates native plants into farmland. So when we think about farmland, we have a lot of farmland that it has been developed to feed the masses, right? And so we have a lot of mono crops, like all soy or all corn or all of one kind of mass-produced crop in the United States. And so what a practice that has been beginning to be established more and more. In fact, the government, the current government, pays farmers to create these buffer strips because it reduces runoff and erosion, and it helps prevent the erosion of the soil from continuing. So the soil, after a while, it gets tired and worn out, and it needs replenishing. It needs to get that biodiversity back into it. And so when we talk about content and we compare this to content, it's a lot like planting high quality content that's highly relevant to your audience, right? And so, like, we talk a lot, or we hear a lot, see a lot about online about the latest marketing trends, and kind of the marketing grind and the marketing hamster wheel, and being blown about by every wind in terms of like, oh, everybody's over here now, or everybody's doing this kind of social media, which really doesn't, first of all, even take into consideration, but who is your audience? Your audience isn't the whole entire internet. One trend isn't a one size fits all for every single audience. So it's about understanding your soil, like what's in your soil, and what is it that your soil needs to thrive, right? To help your crops or your plants grow and thrive. And so that's really an inside job, right? And so I'm comparing it to these prairie strips in that your prairie style content strategy is going to be native to your brand, to your organization, not what everybody else is talking about on the internet in terms of marketing or SEO. It's like, you don't even have to think about that. You just need to attend to your own farmland or to your own garden and see how it's growing and see what you need to add into the soil to make it more biodiverse. And so a content strategy that prioritizes this quality soil is going to attract just the right pollinators to it. And so you'll be engaging an audience that is relevant to your brand, which means that they're going to keep returning. They're going to keep coming back. The other thing about these prairie strips is that they're more cost effective. So they create a conservation practice that helps reduce the water, the input of chemicals and other products that people try to artificially, help the plants and the crops grow, and instead make it so that the soil is naturally more diverse, naturally more fertile for growth. And so this is like what you want to be looking at when you're creating a content strategy, is not just following, every not just following like whatever latest trend or whatever latest or the quantity, oh, we just have to put out a lot of social posts or put out a lot of social media. So it's about focusing on the kind of content that is relevant over time. It has lasting value. And I know that the problem with this is that, it's not a quick overnight thing. It's not a quick fix. It's not glamorous. But it's about long-term sustainability. And if you know anything about me, I'm kind of obsessed with sustainability. I'm obsessed with the idea of like systems that actually work. And a little bit of how I got here is I grew up in a family that in different parts of our family. Basically, we had two farms in the family, and I didn't live on any one of these farms full time, but I bounced around from different households when I was a kid, and I was an only child. And I had spent some time on one farm and some time on another farm in totally different geographic places. But what these farms had in common was they were both very neglected. I had family who lived on them, but they weren't working farms. They weren't basically nothing was going on. The barns were falling apart and things like that. And I was an only child, and there was a lot going on in my family. I'll just put it that way, where I basically like wandered around a lot out in nature. And I wandered around a lot on the properties of these farms. And I just found so much solace, peace, and just fell in love with nature. And I walked around these barns and I saw empty chicken coops and empty horse stalls and things like that. And so I think that that was a seed for me of where I started to really um, really latch onto this idea of creating life, and greening my life, greening property, greening, um, finding sustainability and finding systems that worked. I grew up in a family system that really wasn't working. And I was able to look back on that and go, wow, that wasn't any one person's fault. It was like a system. And I understand now that, with anything that you see that may not be working, like the barn, the empty chicken coop, it it's not it's not an isolated incident, it's part of a whole system. And so this is kind of how my journey has been in marketing and with content, is that I've kind of gravitated towards the kind of marketing that is more about a bigger picture. It's about long-term sustainability. And so that's the kind of content ecosystem that I'm teaching. And, you know, using the nature as a basis, and using gardening and things like that as an analogy for this, because it really, really resonates with me. And so I hope you'll join me like in 2025. I really like one of my main goals is to do as much as I can to like green the internet, basically to help green content on the internet. And really what that's all about is actually creating things that are long lasting, that don't harm the environment. So again, back to these like prairie strips, we're not like spraying a bunch of chemicals or a bunch of fake fertilizer on the crops, but we're planting something that is going to attract the right living things like pollinators, bees, and butterflies that are actually going to enrich the environment and help it grow and thrive. And that is my goal in terms of my work in marketing and my work with my agency is we just love helping people like really build these content ecosystems. So if you want to learn more, I'm going to be doing a webinar tomorrow called From Traffic to Trust, Attract Your Ideal Audience with an Evergreen Content System. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about how this actually works with a content strategy. and all of the kind of byproducts that come out of creating a basically greening your content strategy, growing those prairie buffers, so that you can start to really like enliven your website and enliven your digital presence so that you're really making the most out of the soil and you're really making the most out of whatever like crops you're growing, so to speak, on your through your brand, so that you can make a bigger impact, and make sure you're hitting your financial goals as well. And so that to me is what sustainability is about. Is it's about a system, that works together. And so I hope you'll join me tomorrow, for my webinar. And let's see, I'm hoping I can share that as well real quick. I'll share the page. And also, again, I hope you'll join me to let's see, I just want to share this. All right, awesome. Here we go. I hope you will join me in 2025 to help. Let's green that internet. Okay, let's make this internet a more sustainable place to be. Sorry, I keep getting the wrong thing. Let's try this. Okay, there. So that's my webinar tomorrow, From Traffic to Trust. You can find this on my LinkedIn page, and I'll also put it in the comments of the live recording when the live broadcast is ended. And thanks so much for joining me today. Really enjoy talking about prairie buffers and how they relate to content strategy. So if any of this resonated with you, I'd love to hear how this resonated with you. So please feel free to let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear more about what you think about this idea, and I will see you again.